We begin. What are we going? Reverse order?
We can do that, or we can go
standings?
alphabetical.
Well, what does our producer have? Because he has his
We
graphic.
are going to go
graphics.
with the worst team first.
Okay. That's
So-
the same as
build up from
alphabetical, so don't worry.
The Chicago Blackhawks. The fact that he wrote missed the playoffs, I know he had to, but that was kind of
I
obvious.
had to fill space.
When you have 52 points in a regular season, you're not going to make the playoffs unless it's a shortened season. Is there any reason for us to believe that the Blackhawks are better off this year than last year as far as the cellar dwellers in the Central?
None.
I think they're better off. I don't think they're anywhere close to the playoffs or anything like that. But they had a few key players. They got Brody, Tyler Bertuzzi. They got Persois, Mikheyev, Patrick Maroon, Alec Martinez, Craig Smith. So they Teuvo Teravainen. So they did add some guys that'll make them a better team. I don't know how much better. That's all I'll say. And Connor Bedard is in his second year, which will benefit him.
Connor Bedard is going to make another step, but I mean, who's going to give him the puck? You know, and I don't know. I think they're going to be the same club. And are they going to get a couple more points? I don't know, because everybody else above them is, 3-4 teams that are above them. You're talking about Nashville got better. Dallas is obviously Dallas, and the Avs, if they ever get a couple guys back, who are they going to steal any more points from? So I just think they're right where they're going to be. They're going to be in the same spot. Did they get any better? Did they add some better character? I think they added a couple players with some character, which I think part of that is about, teaching your younger players. Yeah, I mean, you're going to get in some adverse situations during the course of the season. Older guys help you through those.
Helps to have Bertuzzi, guy from Sudbury, to help to defend Connor Bedard. Because you know what I heard, lads? I heard there are an impossible amount of good-looking girls in Sudbury.
Impossible to have
Impossible amount. No, there's
right?
too many
I didn't
for
know
that for Sudbury. Yeah,
Is that right?
Yeah.
How did you snoop that? How did you hear that?
Shorzy.
Who?
Shorzy.
He's going back to his one.
Shorzy.
All right, that was
one
too long on the
TV show.
Blackhawks. Next.
It was. So let's go to the Utah Hockey Club, because last year the Arizona Coyotes missed the playoffs at 77. Guys, this is a team, we're going to get into our predictions in our next segment, but this is a team that I'm bullish on is going to be better than they were last year for a couple of reasons. One, they have their own NHL building, still being renovated as far as getting it to where they want to be. But I think that instead of having this sort of perpetual, we're not sure where we're going to end up, and the uncertainty of the ownership, that's going to change. And being in Salt Lake City is going to be a huge difference for that group.
Well, the players don't care about ownership that much, right? But the building that they were playing in, now they get a new building. And, there's that saying, I've talked about this before, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And I talk about it when players get traded and they go to a new city, and then all of a sudden you can play a certain style and everybody kind of likes you if you get off to right. This is a whole team that gets a second chance to make a first impression. And they've got a great owner. They're going to love Utah, and they're going to love the surroundings and everything else that's there. So I think they're going in there all refreshed, and they're all going to be able to earn some new fans in that building. And I think typically you're going to find guys that maybe aren't as physical, that will end up being a little bit more physical in front of new fans. And there's going to be a little bit more of an effort, I would say, from this group. So I agree with you. I think they're going to take some points from teams that probably wouldn't expect it.
Yeah, I mean, adding Sergachev from Tampa is a huge one for them. They also get John Marino from New Jersey and Ian Cole on defense. So upgraded the defense a little bit. Clayton Keller is captain. They have more forward momentum. Gunther is someone they project to score a lot of goals for that team eventually.
He's still making $894.
Yeah,
$800,000 on the cap. He's already signed a deal for $7.1 million.
Yeah.
For 8 years after that.
I think they're going to be a better team, and I think they're going to be pushing for a playoff spot.
We will get into Arizona/Utah more as we get into our predictions. The Minnesota Wild finished in 6th place last year. You know their GM a little bit. Billy Guerin played here in Dallas. Yep. Any reason to think they're going to be better than last year?
I don't know. They're going to keep Fleury around. They got to have 3 goaltenders. I'm concerned about their big dog in Kaprizov. I don't know if it's been. Sometimes when I watch him play, he was so dynamic, and I know he's had a couple injuries, but I don't think it's that. I just think that they've got to get out of cap hell. And Billy can probably go out and make some more moves. I know that Minnesota deserves a good club, and I think that they did the things that they had to as far as the cap goes a few years ago, and they're paying for it in the last couple of years.
$14.7 million on the cap between Zach Parise and Ryan Suter for this year. Then
That's
next year
wild.
it drops to 1.6 for 3 more years. That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
When you're trying to fight for a playoff spot, it's like taking a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah.
You can't go out and get any players. And so, but I just, the whole thing with me with Kaprizov is just he looks like he's down, and he doesn't play with that same energy and that having fun in the game. And so, for the fans and for himself and the club, I hope he gets back to what we saw in the first year or two with him. So that's my main concern there, is getting through this year for that team.
Yeah, I don't have high hopes for Minnesota, but the keys for them, Brock Faber, Marco Rossi. That's the extended Faber this summer. Rossi broke out for 21 goals last year. Those two, along with Kaprizov, is their chance, pretty much. If they're going to make noise, it's going to be
And they
because of
need
them.
some older guys to stay healthy. And I'm looking at Matt Zuccarello, who's 37 now. When he's in the lineup, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
I remember Jim Montgomery told us once that he makes everybody on the ice better. He said when the Stars traded for Zuccarello, he was instantly the best passer on the team.
Yep.
He's a really fun player to watch, but he does get hurt. He's 37. We'll see how that goes.
They
Couple
can
other
help
guys like
themselves
that too.
a lot with Gustafsson and Fleury
It was
playing.
an interesting choice. You weren't going to go with Gustafsson.
Gustafsson is how I like to say it.
Okay.
No, they
well,
can
I
help themselves a lot with some solid
and they have
goaltending.
Jesper Wallstedt on there
Yeah,
too,
they
so
can
that's
help
a big
themselves
question
with
for
that.
the young goalie. All right, up next, St. Louis Blues. Luddy, I know you're buddies with Doug Armstrong, and they didn't miss the playoffs by much, but I don't know if they're really ready to take the next step. What do you think?
They're going to win games for teams that don't come prepared to play against them in their style. They're going to be a hard team to play against. They're going to play a bit of a physical style. They've got, a couple players there. But I think that teams that come into that building, especially if you take the 2 points for granted, they're one of those teams that there's going to be a couple teams that are going to not make the playoffs because they weren't ready to play against St. Louis and the way that they approach the game. And I think Doug Armstrong knows that his club is in a rebuilding or retooling, however you want to say it politely. And you're going to get through this. And I think he knows that with that crowd and that kind of a building, the kind of team that these guys, as far as fans go, like to see play. And you're going to get that. And I think they've got a goaltender that can steal some games too if he wants to get on top of his game.
That's a great way to put their team. For me, is steal is a good word. They could steal some games. They could steal a little bit of space in this division. They stole those two guys from Edmonton, which helped their roster a little bit.
And he looked good when we saw him in preseason.
Yeah. And they get Matthew Joseph and Texier, two guys that know how to be physical and play that style that we're talking about. So this is one of my biggest wild cards of the whole NHL this year, is watching this team.
Yeah, it's hard to see real for sure whether or not. I think that they're going to live and die offensively with whether or not Robert Thomas has a big year.
Yeah.
He had a big injury recently, and that was troubling. Jordan Kyrou, we know, can score, as the Stars saw that the other night. Now we go to the top three. Well, we top two because we already talked about the Stars. Third place last year, the Colorado Avalanche. I don't know what to make of this team because I think they have the best home ice advantage in the league playing at altitude in Denver. They have some of the best offensive weapons in McKinnon, Makar, Rantanen. When he's not in the assistance program, Nichushkin, having him come off that at some point will be interesting to see how he reintegrates with the group. And there's this lingering talk about Gabriel Landeskog, their captain.
2 years now.
It's been crazy.
Knee cartilage replacement. They seem to think he's going to play this year.
Yeah, they're a lot more confident than they were in the past.
This team is going to be hard to beat in the regular season. It's the playoffs that I'm not sure. As far as a regular season team, they could win this division. But in the playoffs, I'm just not sure. I feel like they're the same kind of balanced group that won the Stanley Cup a couple years ago.
And I've been the guy that says that I don't like distractions. And Nichushkin, I don't know. To me, there's just something hanging over there when he comes back. And when you listen to the head coach talk, they're going to welcome him back with open arms. And so, it's happened a couple different times at tough times during the year also. And they're missing their captain, as you spoke about. And so there's just some little things hanging over that team. And I don't even know if they're goaltenders. I mean, when they win, it's because they score goals. And I'm not saying that the goaltenders aren't good, but you have to. They need some goals in order to get the wins. I mean, what was it, a couple of years ago? He had like 37 saves, and he's not even. His goals against isn't great.
Yep.
It's just they had a real offensive team. It's what they are. And like you said, McKinnon, Makar, they've got two of the best players on the planet. But at some point, you lean on them all season long, but they will steal some points from some other clubs.
Yeah, I think the worry for me, that the word around for this team has been a lot about their start, because as we mentioned, the Nichushkin thing, they didn't get any cap flexibility, so they couldn't really make a whole lot of moves this summer. I know they probably would have liked to upgrade a little bit. So for me, it's interesting to watch them out of the start to see how if they don't try to tread water for a bit and maybe lose some ground, and then try to make it up when they get Nichushkin back, Landeskog potentially, and upgrade a little bit on that one.
I actually skipped the team, and John knew it, but he rolled with it.
I did. I was going to click on it, and then I was
We're
like,
not
what's he
talking
doing?
about that
I'm assuming we're talking about. We were talking about the team the Stars are playing on Thursday.
We're going in reverse order of standings. I've jumped right over the Nashville Predators and went right to Colorado.
They did nothing this offseason.
Nashville did make the playoffs, lost in the opening round. Look at the guys they signed.
That's
Steven
crazy.
Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea. Gave UC Saros a big deal, although that's not how you spell UC Saros. And they also signed Scott Wedgwood,
Wedgie.
former Dallas Star. Guys, I'm not sure if I'm ready to just anoint the Preds as the new Central Division champs, but they're going to be in the hunt.
I thought we were going in order that we thought they were going to finish.
Nice word there,
bottom
too,
to
eh?
top.
Thank you.
That's what
Which
I thought
one?
we were doing.
No, it was last season's order.
No, I totally
The
screwed
wild
it
card
up.
team.
I don't think that they're going to finish at the top of the division, but I think they're going to be in the top 3 for sure. I think they're going to finish second. That's where I have them. And again, I think you have a motivated Stamkos that, didn't get the contract or whatever he wanted in Tampa. Marchessault, another one, didn't get the contract that he wanted. And I think you got a couple
theme.
of key players. Huh?
It's a theme with them.
Yeah.
Wedgwood didn't get the contract he
That's what
wanted.
I'm
You got a
saying
bunch
is
of
I
guys
think
that
you got some guys that want to prove the teams that they played with, you guys made mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think that it's one thing to have one player come into a new club like that, but when you've got a band of them that kind of feel that way, saying, hey, here we go. Let's prove to, some people that they made the mistakes, not giving us what we wanted if they really wanted to be back. So, again, Yossi, still a top defender. They've got a top goaltender in the league. So they're going to make some noise this year. I don't think they're going to finish because you got to get by Dallas and, but there's going to be competition. You got to be ready for 3-4 of these teams.
They're better up front than they were a year ago
Oh, yeah.
by a long shot.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if they're better on the back end. Yossi is fantastic. They added Brady Shea.
If he gets back to
they
normal,
If he does.
they got Luke Shen as well.
But after that, you've got Alexander Carrier, Luke Shen, Dante Fabro, who's been hot and cold, Jeremy Lazan, and then Spencer Stastny. I don't know if that's discernibly better on the blue line.
Well, I mean,
think their
essentially, they only
goaltending-
lost Barry.
But think about this. I think I didn't think their defense was that good last
That's
year.
what I'm saying. So, but better in terms of that, I would say.
I just think
Shea
their
over
goaltending
Brady
is better because not only do they have Saros locked up for the long term, but they added Scott Wedgwood. Their previous backups after Pekka Rinne retired weren't good enough. Wedgwood will give him good relief. The forwards are definitely better because they were overly reliant on Philip Forsberg to do all the scoring. Now they have Stamkos, Marchessault, Ryan O'Reilly's still there. Gustav Nyquist, I know he's 35, but I've always liked him as a player. They're pretty good up front. We'll see.
don't count out that fan base.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic.
It's one of the best cities to play in now in the NHL. Great fan base.
So cool how the arena's right there.
Yeah, and
Love
I
that.
think what Trotz did, as far as moving from a coach to a general manager, is he said we're going to get more exciting for these fans, and that's what they did.
Yeah, they
And,
did.
That
and
will
I
be
think
a
it's gonna be
tough home
exciting team
building.
to watch, and the more that they get off to a good start, and the fans are what the fans are, there'll be a buzz around the city again.
All right, let's do the other team, and then we'll get to our predictions. But Winnipeg Jets, they almost won the division last year. They changed coaches because Rick Bowness retired after 5 decades in the NHL. What a phenomenal human being he is. And Scott Arniel, who was an assistant, takes over as the head guy. What do you think about this roster? Because if anybody were going to take a step down, because we all think Nashville is going to take a step forward, it could be Winnipeg.
If it wasn't for goaltending, I don't know where they'd be. And if Hellebuck can continue what he's done, and he's under siege at times. And again, it's another, small market in Canada, but that building is full every single night. They've got a great fan base. I just think they're a middle-of-the-road team.
I don't have a lot of confidence in Winnipeg. I mean, if you just look at the players, goaltending is number one. They brought in Capo Kakinen and what was the other goalie they brought in? Comrie as their guy. So they have options if they to give
they
relief.
live and die with Hellebuck.
Yeah, but
right?
to give him relief, they're trying to find a solution.
If
but
he gets injured,
yeah, I mean, you look at the team. They lost Brendan Dillon, Sean Monahan, Tyler Toffoli. They really didn't replace any of those guys.
The one thing that I do say is that they really did a nice job replenishing some of their depth when they traded Pierre-Luc Dubois to the LA Kings. I thought LA lost that trade badly.
Yeah, yes.
And it's not because Dubois isn't a good player, although it's now been, 4 teams?
Yeah.
The
In what, 3
amount of
months?
players they got back, Alex Iafallo and Gabe Velarde, Rasmus Kupari, those are good players, and they'll be fine. I tell you one thing, one of my favorite American players in the NHL, Kyle Connor,
Yeah.
I think he's been overlooked in a lot of NHL markets
his whole
because,
career.
Yeah.
because he plays in Winnipeg.
His whole
You
career has been
imagine
overlooked.
if he played somewhere else with his production, he's a phenomenal winger.
So fast.
Stars could have actually drafted him the year they took Dennis Gurianov. I'm not going to harp on that too much, but I mean, they also could have had Matthew Barzal on that draft instead. But Kyle Connor on almost any other team, he's getting paid well and he's 27, but I think he's a great player.
Yeah, it's just a supporting cast
Yep.
for him, And again, is that enough to lean on? Is an outstanding guy with speed and can score some goals and obviously one goaltender.